What is up, everyone? We are back with the PFN Scouting Podcast. Derek was on PTO last week, so we took a little break, but we are back and we are finally diving deep into the 2025 NFL Draft class. We're not going to talk about quarterbacks today. We had a podcast dedicated fully to QBs a few weeks ago, so circle back and check that out if you want to hear our thoughts on guys like Shedeur Sanders, Carson Beck, Donovan Smith, Jackson Dart, all of the above. But today, we are doing our soft 2025 NFL Draft offensive preview, running backs, receivers, a little bit of tight end talk, and maybe some offensive line talk at the end if we have time, but focusing mainly on the running backs and the wide receivers, those big money positions. So before we get into that, I got to ask Derek, you were on your PTO. I hope you're feeling better. He had some strep throat the week before, but you're feeling better, feeling good, feeling re-energized. How are you, my friend?
You know, I got to take the week off basically from, having to deepen my voice, put a little bass in it to get my two little girls to do what I want. I got to tag some family members in. Speaking of family members, my father is a huge Florida Gators fan. And I was telling him, I got this podcast coming up and Trevor Etienne going from the Florida Gators, kind of committing an SEC on SEC crime by going to the Georgia Bulldogs. So we were talking a little bit about Trevor Etienne and some of the other running backs in this class. And it kind of primed me up for this, guy. So it was a great weekend off. Got to talk a little football with my dad. Now I'm ready to talk a little bit of football with everybody, including yourself, my friend. So I'm ready to go.
Yes, sir, man. I'm ready too. I've been raring up, and we're getting closer to the season here. And by the way, college football 2025, right, is coming out soon. My friends have been bugging me about that so much. Like, Ian, what team are you going to pick? It's like, guys, I watch football all day for work. Like, I want to do anything else when I'm off the clock, but that'll be a conversation for another time because I have a feeling they're going to work me into it anyway. I got to figure out a way, but college football is coming back on the video game side, so that's gonna be fun. People will be able to get immersed into it. But we've got a lot of tape watching on our side, the actual tape on the game film, and this has been a fun class to dive into so far. I think last year you had Trey Benson, you had Jonathan Brooks. I think it was an interesting class at the top, but the general consensus, I think, was that the real gems of the running back position were going to be coming this year. And I think so far, my impression has been, it's a very strong class. And then wide receiver, very intriguing too. Before we get into any of the other positions though, Derek, because we were priming up. We were talking about the plan before the pod, but then one player just came to my mind that we got to address. We got to figure out what we're going to talk about. Travis Hunter, offense or defense? How do we approach this guy? I want to hear what your inclinations have been, and then I'll give my thoughts on him just because he's such a polarizing prospect.
Yeah, he's a very, very, very interesting prospect just because, playing over 1,000 total snaps last year at Colorado and obviously making impact plays on both sides of the football. I personally would probably prefer him to play corner if I'm grading him just what I saw last season. But certainly he has enough chops as a route runner and playmaker after the catch, even though I would like to see him, get on that peanut butter offseason program, put on a little bit of muscle, but I know Coach Prime's going to have the guys ready to play there in Colorado. But boy, oh boy, for a guy to be able to play at that high a level, even D1 football on both sides, and basically never coming off the football field, it feels like. Travis Hunter is a unicorn of a prospect to try to figure out with what to do with him. I think he can be a late day one pick, even at wide receiver, depending on what he puts on tape this year. And obviously playing with Shedeur Sanders. So he's a very, very interesting prospect. I'm very interested to see what he does this upcoming season, but a lot of things to love about what he does, including some great ball skills on both sides of the ball. Where do you feel like, do you think he should play wide receiver? Do you think he prospects back out at the NFL level better at corner? Or do you think he's going to be somebody that can contribute on both sides of the ball at the NFL level, which is something we basically never see?
Yeah, so I'll preface with this first. Like, we do barely ever see that now. Like, it was, even in olden times, it wasn't really regular, right? It was only a select few guys who do that. So can he play both full-time or at least close to full-time at the NFL level? I think he'll have to focus on one or the other. I think that's probably what's going to happen. And that's just, the NFL is a different grind. It's really tough to focus on different positions. That said, and this is going to be, I was going to save this reveal for later, but we prompted it pretty well. So I'll just lead into it now because we're talking about my rankings and where I have guys. Travis Hunter, just really, really close. The top three guys are really close to my board, but he actually has my highest wide receiver grade so far. entering the year.
Wow.
And I was leading into that evaluation. I was looking at Travis Hunter, and the conversation was, should he play at wide receiver or cornerback? And my first inclination was, having that kind of turnover threat, because his ball skills are truly hyper elite. Like, this is a guy who can find the ball, who can make a play on it, the body control, the instincts, just extraordinary, right? Like a wide receiver at corner, pretty much. You hear that phrase all the time. Travis Hunter embodies that, right? So I was thinking to myself, that's the kind of guy I'd want to keep a corner, right? Because if I can have that kind of turnover threat, that can be really special for a defense. But then I watched his wide receiver tape, and you mentioned it, the route running. I was blown away by how good of a route runner he is already. I think definitely get the graham cracker protein powder in, get some pounds added on for sure. He's like 6 foot, 6'1", 185. So, but I think, the route running framework is so fun. The throttle control, the flexibility and bend is just absurd. And then he's explosive. He's got speed. All of the athletic qualities are there. And then, we know the ball skills. We know the ability to play at the catch point. He's got the agility and twitch and the explosion and the rack ability after the catch too. The one thing that really decided, he scored slightly higher at receiver than corner for me, very close. He'd be an early to mid first round guy at either position for me right now. I think the raw talent is incredible. But the delineating factor for me, why I would prefer him at wide receiver as opposed to corner, 185 pounds, so a little bit lighter for sure. And I'm looking at his stylistic tendencies, right? How does he play on both sides of the ball? When you're a corner, right, you got to jam guys at the release and at stems, right? You got to be a little more authoritative with your physicality. You got to be more of an obstructing force. Whereas as a wide receiver, you can use your athleticism to get on the attack, get upfield, and kind of pry past physicality from opposing corners. I think Travis Hunter's style of physicality is more tuned toward deconstruction than obstruction. Just what I was taking on tape. So, taking that into account with the natural talent he has on both sides, I think it would play more into his stylistic tendencies to let him play at wide receiver than at corner. That's just me personally. I think there's no wrong answer. He's a phenomenal prospect at both spots, but it was a really eye-opening process for me because leading into it, I was leaning corner a little bit. And then when I came out, I was leaning wide receiver a little bit. So I don't think there's a wrong answer, but that's my thought process.
No, so the physicality portion of it certainly makes sense, right? If you're anticipating that there's some potential issues transitioning to the next level with his physicality at the line of scrimmage or even at the break point on the defensive side of the ball, that certainly makes a little bit of sense, including anybody that's playing receiver at the next level, at the NFL level, being able to body him a little bit at the catch point. Like those things make sense, but his ball skills are just so exciting to me for a DB that it's hard to take my mind out of, man, I want that type of difference maker on the defensive side of the football.
It's not just the ball skills either. It's the route recognition that comes from being a wide receiver. Like there are a lot of times like he can man guys up, right? And he relies on that mobility. So, a lot of times he doesn't have to jam fully because he's just so good at using that spatial awareness. But at the same time, there are reps in zone coverage where he's playing a 2-on-1 and he's leaning a little bit, baiting a QB into throwing an in breaker and then just swoops in front of it, right? So not only does he have the ball skills to make a play on the ball, but he knows how to incite different risk-taking tendencies from QBs and then capitalize on it, which is another really special trait to have as a corner. So, you would want to indulge that. You want to see, all right, how far can we take this thing, right? But at the same time, too, he's such a weapon as a wide receiver. Again, there's really no wrong answer, but it's fascinating.
Well, if you're saying that he's a receiver, or you think he projects better or graded out last year better as a receiver, and certainly your thought process for him potentially heading into this season and heading into the National Football League, that certainly makes sense. But there's some other guys in this receiver class, right, that are super intriguing. We talked at length about how deep this receiver class was. And there's some guys that stayed in school for an additional season, probably because of the depth and the strength of the receiver class in 2024. Yet at the top of the board, Ian, and I'm really interested to hear at least your top five so we can kind of have this discussion. There's Luther Burden III out of Missouri, Tetairoa McMillan at Arizona, who had a really nice season in 2023. Emeka Egbuka, I was actually anticipating that he was probably going to be another day 2 pick in the 2024 NFL draft. He stays at Ohio State. And then we talked about Travis Hunter. You have him as your wide receiver 1 in this class. And then there's a handful of other guys that are kind of intriguing, like Evan Stewart. He's going from Texas A&M over to Oregon. You've got Isaiah Bond, even Trey Harris over there at Ole Miss that are some guys that are certainly in that conversation. But I'm kind of interested to hear what your top 5 is and what your first impressions of this class is and how many receivers you could see potentially earning day 1 NFL draft capital.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my first impression is that it's another strong class. And I know a lot of people were like saying, get your receivers now with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. and Xavier Worthy, because guess what? You're not going to be able to, there won't be a class like this in a long time. I don't know if the 2025 class is going to be quite as good as that, like where we had 3 guys going to the top 10, right? But it looks very strong on initial viewings. Travis Hunter, my wide receiver 1. Again, I think the 3-level threat framework is very appealing with him, and his brand of physicality really translates in the separating phase. Like, he's actually proven that he can use his length to deconstruct while working past stems with that lateral agility on second level releases, right? The bend, the throttle control, the speed, the spatial awareness, right? All of those things are very, very high level. And then the ball skills to top it off too. So he's my wide receiver 1 to start, very close. I got Luther Burden III as my wide receiver 2. And I know he's a favorite for wide receiver 1 early on, man. And I can see why. I can definitely see why. 5'11", I think 208, right? So he's got a really rocked up, dense, well-leveraged frame. And as you would expect, he's a rack dynamo. Run after catch. This guy is one of the most well-attuned guys in the modern NFL, I think, to be a rack threat. Explosive, the twitch and the foot speed and the agility and the change of direction is just insane. And then he can explode out of those transitions with ease. He's got enough speed to threaten up the seam. He's got really great catching instincts too. That kind of surprised me, right? I was worried that maybe he'd be a little one-dimensional as a rack guy, right? But he can get up there. He can use body positioning and body control, and he can extend beyond his frame and really snare tough catches. The route running, to me, is the biggest thing that he needs to improve. And I think he does have all the building blocks. I think he has the flexibility. I think he definitely has the hip sync for sure. I don't think there's any inbuilt limitations that would prohibit him from having a full route tree. For me, I just think the biggest thing was sequencing between his feet and his eyes, right? I think that definitely needs to improve. There are a few times where he gets tied up a little bit. The pacing can be a little inconsistent sometimes. And you can see where Missouri definitely, they know how to scheme touches, right? And there are times where they do just scheme the touch on a quick slant or a screen or things like that, right? So, or a drag route. So, I think continuing to expand that and work off of the route running building blocks that you do have, that's the next step for him. But he's a fun player, man. And 5'11", 208, I think his arms look pretty long. I think he could measure over 32 inch. The comp that was coming to my head when I was watching him was Chris Chambers, who played for the Dolphins and was a really good player. Dude,
Wisconsin.
Freaky explosive, right? But he was 5'11", over 200, and I think he had like 34-inch arms. So the dude had levers for his size, like just unreal proportional length. I don't know if Burden is going to measure quite as long, but again, you have that combination where this dude is a dynamic rack threat, but he can also be a really compelling, just authoritative, just really kind of a lot of gravity at the catch point is what I'm trying to say. The vertical athleticism, positioning, hand strength, and then he's got all of the building blocks to be a true route runner as well. So very excited for his development. I think he has an early to mid first round grade for me entering the year. So excited to see what he can do. I think he's very close between him and Travis Hunter. He is a contender for wide receiver 1, and another guy who is T-Mac, Tetairoa McMillan. He's my wide receiver 3. Love what he brings to the table. He's fun. He's fun. I think he has a basketball background, and you can tell. I mean, 6'5", 210. This dude plays catch point positioning as good as anyone. I think he's very good at boxing out defensive backs. Naturally has the size, so it can be tough to match up with him, right? Really strong hands, really good catching instincts. But, I think, this past class, we were looking at guys like Rome Odunze, MHJ, guys who had really good size adjusted flexibility as route runners. I think T-Mac fits that kind of archetype too. He's a guy who definitely has the hip sync and the throttle control and the ability to use quick double moves and sustain acceleration through transitions, right? I think everything is there for him. For Burden, it was more of a sequencing issue, sequencing and pacing that he can improve. McMillan, I think it's pad level, which is natural when you're 6'5", right? There are times where pressing upfield into stems can be a little bit too high with his pads, and that can impact the seamlessness of your direction changes, right? But he's explosive. He's a really fluid rack threat too. That was one thing that stood out to me. This guy's like a gazelle moving upfield. He can stack quick hip transitions and kind of sift through congestion. A lot of really conducive and strong hands against contact too. Instinctive when he's tracking the ball, but then also when he needs to make a clutch catch, this guy can do it. He can be a target funnel with that rack element, with that route running. So T-Mac is fun. I like him a lot. I think Burden is a little bit more explosive, and that was another reason that he graded a little bit, which Burden's just a freak, man. He's just freaky explosive. Him and Travis are very explosive. So it's not a slight to T-Mac. It's more of a nod to these guys who are just out of this world, right, in terms of raw talent. So those are my top three. Egbuka is my wide receiver 4. He had a very high grade for me entering the 2023 season. Obviously, injuries kind of played a role. I think when he was on the field and not 100%, you saw how that impacted his confidence, his hand strength a little bit, a few drops last year. So I'm really looking forward to him bouncing back this coming year. Because remember, and those of you who've been listening to us on the pod for a while, you remember there was one wide receiver that I liked a lot, maybe too much, in the 2024 NFL draft. And that was Jalen Polk from Washington. And I look at Emeka Egbuka, 6'1", 205, pretty good proportional length, movement Z with universal alignment versatility, good rack ability, and then he can carve through zone coverage looks with that hip flexibility and explosion. He's got kind of that Polk profile too, man. I don't want to make big leaps here, but that's kind of what I gravitate to. So I like that a lot. If Egbuka can stay healthy, get confident, and return to that 2022 form where he had a really high grade for me, top 5 receiver, first round pick entering the 2023 season, I definitely think he can return to the first round conversation. And then my wide receiver 5, Isaiah Bond. Alabama, and then transferred to Texas. Evan Stewart is really close. I'm glad that you mentioned him because I like him a lot. Isaiah Bond, though, to me, is one of those guys who I think, especially in Steve Sarkisian's offense, with Worthy and A.D. Mitchell moving on, he could be primed for big things, man. And Jalen Milroe as well. I think one thing that we talked about on the QB pod is that Jalen Milroe has a ton of talent, right? But watching Jermaine Burton and Isaiah Bond, there were some yards and touchdowns left on the table because, either misreads or inaccuracy down the field. So I'm thinking that Isaiah Bond has a good chance and maybe to definitely uptick his production with the target volume and the QB play in Texas. And Quinn Ewers has his issues too, right? But I do think there's going to be more passing volume there potentially for him. So Isaiah Bond, 5'11", 185, really good separator. I mean, this dude can just gash man and zone coverage. Just that quintessential separator, right? Explosive, super fluid. He's got curvilinear acceleration and great bend on his brakes, explosive, speed threat. But the one thing that really impressed me was the size adjusted physicality. He's not a big dude at wide receiver, right? He's under 190, he's under 5, he's 5'11" around, and he plays with that chip on his shoulder. He's got that wide receiver, that bona fide wide receiver mentality where I'm going to get this ball, I'm going to lower my shoulder. I don't care if you're bigger than me. I'm going to play up to you. And I love that for my wide receivers too. So Isaiah Bond, my wide receiver 5, I really like his upside in his space oriented modern NFL. There's a few other guys too that kind of come to mind. We can talk about a few other names that maybe we got kind of floating up there, but that's my top 5 really early on in the process.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got the same top 5, just in a slightly different order. I actually had Travis Hunter as wide receiver 3, just because it's a little bit tricky to even grade him out as a receiver, but he's certainly in that top 5 conversation if that is where he's going to be playing full time, or at least playing the majority of his time in the National Football League. Tetairoa McMillan T-Mac is certainly someone that there's some vibes of like Drake London or Michael Pittman as far as like a dominant at the catch point with his physicality and his natural feel for boxing out defenders. I mean, there's multiple contested catches where people are just draped on him, and it doesn't matter just because he attacks the football. There were some whip routes though that I saw on tape that, operating on the outside, dashing inside, and being able to, sink his hips and at least flash that ability to be able to do that. I'm not saying that he excels at it. He's not Luther Burden as far as his twitch and explosiveness, but there are some intriguing fundamental blocks that, being able to control his body at that size is very, very, very encouraging. That I think he can operate as an X heading into the National Football League. I think he's going to be a first round pick this upcoming draft cycle. But Luther Burden, right now, I believe I have him as my wide receiver 1, T-Mac at 2, Hunter at 3. Ibuka at 4, it feels almost disrespectful because I see where you're going with Jalen Polk. I see some of that profile, Ian. I really, really do. And there's a lot of exciting things that he does as far as his versatility. I think that there's some route running nuance. I like his ability to be able to win against either zone or man coverage. Like you said, I want to see him revert back to that 22 form in 2024 and hopefully build off that and see his draft stock rise. Isaiah Bond, though. I mean, and you know, cue the James Bond jokes, because I heard Brad Nessler do it on some of his stuff, and I love it. It's Bond.
Isaiah Bond leans into it completely too. I think his Twitter handle is like 007. All right, so like he's fully aware. He's leaning into it all the way. Which, hey, props to you, man. That's when you have that name, you got to go all in. And he's like a secret agent out there. He's like a covert operative. You know, he's just all of a sudden he's in the deep 30s, past your deep safety. How did he get there? We don't know, but he did. It's over. It's some of the covert ops against coverages, man. It's really fun to see, and he's definitely a fun. What were your thoughts on him? I cut you off there. I was going with the social media plug. I cut you off. What are your thoughts on him? No.
It was really close between Isaiah Bond and Evan Stewart, though, for that wide receiver 5 spot. I mean, but you already kind of touched on it. That competitiveness, that dog in him. I see it with Bond, and I see the blocks to be able to be a 3-level threat. And have more production, like you said, with Jalen Milroe, still developing as a passer, I believe. Certainly the building blocks are there for Isaiah Bond to be a movable weapon across your formation. And I just like what I saw from him a little bit more than Evan Stewart, although I'm intrigued by Evan Stewart truly, because I think he's somebody that's probably 4.3 speed that is going to be an exciting prospect in that Oregon offense, you know, now with Troy Franklin in the NFL. So Trey Harris is, though, I mean, now that we kind of get outside of that top 5, you know, Torrey Horton is someone you mentioned about Jalen Polk. I see a lot to love about Torrey Horton's game. What are your thoughts on Torrey Horton out of Colorado State? Because there's some formation versatility and his way to attack the ball. I mean, there's multiple examples of him catching the ball with his hands away from his frame. He's not the twitchiest athlete in the world, not the most explosive, but there's plenty of fluidity and start-stop ability that I really, really think that he can be a contributor at the NFL level. I just wonder, what is his ceiling? Because he's obviously the focal point of that Colorado State passing attack, and he didn't come out this year, probably because of the depth of the receiver class, but he's a really intriguing name and saw some things on tape that I really like. But what are your thoughts on Torrey Horton out of Colorado State?
Yeah, for sure. And I saw a little bit. I got to do a deep dive still, but I'm excited to do it as we get farther down the board. And what I saw, I watched Travis Hunter versus Colorado State, and he lined up against Horton a few times. And the speed caught me by surprise. When he's able to like get out and extend his strides, right? You know, I don't know if he has that elite one-step burst that some of the other guys do, but he definitely has enough speed to threaten vertically once he has that runway, right? Like you mentioned, I think he has functional flexibility as a route runner, like you said, strong hands. I think he's pretty good extending beyond his frame. You know, I think just a really solid 3-level receiver, right? I don't know if he's a elite rack threat, right? But again, you talk about enough speed, enough separation ability, strong hands, all of the traits that I think about when I think about like a solid wide receiver too, a solid target funnel, right? Like if you need to go to this guy, you can. Is he going to be that guy who dictates the defensive look and frees up other guys? Maybe not. But I do think a guy could be a really good functional component of your offense. So again, I got to do a deep dive on him. But from what I saw against Travis Hunter, right, because Torrey Horton is a guy who's definitely put up a lot of volume, I think, over the past 1 or 2 years. You know, he's a guy who's been very productive. And why is that? He makes himself available. He converts to the catch point, right? And he's got enough speed to threaten vertically. That's always going to be a good combination at the NFL level. So he's a fun one. A few other guys, I'll touch on Evan Stewart because, again, I think, he was very close to Bond for me. I think he's actually a little bit twitchier than Bond is. I think Bond's a little bit more fluid, but they're both guys who are very, very well attuned to be separators in the modern NFL. Guys who can separate independently as route runners. Evan Stewart really impressed me with his hand strength at the catch point too for his size. He's pretty wiry, 6 foot. 175. So he's a wiry dude, right? But he's got that wiry play strength to him, like we were talking about with Devontae Smith a few cycles ago, right? He's not that level of prospect yet. But I do think he's a guy who has that explosion, that speed, that twitch, that energy, and then the hand strength and instincts to convert at the catch point. I think it's a really good combination. And then Tez Johnson on the other side at Oregon is another fun player. I think around 5'10". He's smaller. He's 5'10", around 160, right? So definitely lighter. But just in the little bit I've seen, there's some Tank Dell. I think there is some Tank Dell, explosive, enough speed for sure. But another guy who plays beyond his frame, is authoritative in spite of that size, and is willing to make tough catches too. And, it speaks to, just his level of play that he was able to be as productive as he was with Troy Franklin there. He's a guy who I think may have outproduced Troy Franklin last year. I got to double check that. But, he's a guy who definitely has the numbers and the traits to back it up. A few other guys that have stood out to me in what I've been able to see: Iowa State, the Cyclones, they got a duo there that's pretty impressive. Jalen Noel at wide receiver, and then Jaden Higgins, who I think transferred in from community college. But those guys are a little different. They're clashing molds. Jaden Higgins, I think, is around 6'3", 6'4", over 200, but a pretty good route runner for his size. Good throttle control, hip sync flexibility, strong hands as well, and has enough vertical speed. He's a guy that could be a sleeper, and I expect him. They got Rocco Beck to come back, who really turned it on down the stretch last year. That passing offense could be pretty productive and have those two guys as the engines. And then Jalen Noel. He's a guy who kind of caught my eye 2 cycles ago, I think, first. And he's been pretty productive so far, but he's more of the rack weapon, right? I think he's around 5'11", 6 foot, around 200 pounds. He can separate pretty quickly on those quick slants, really twitched up, really explosive in space. I think Jaden Higgins is a little bit more to him with the gravity and the size and the hands. But Jalen Noel is a guy, again, the modern NFL, which is space-oriented, which kind of rewards alignment versatility and schematic versatility. Jalen Noel is another one who could really fit that dynamic very well. But Trey Harris is a guy that you mentioned. And I want to hear your thoughts, because that was the first name that you mentioned, and he's got some pretty nice, pretty exciting reps on tape, catching passes from Jackson Dart. We know the Ole Miss offense is going to be productive year in and year out, but Trey Harris is definitely a guy that caught my eye too. So what's the bedrock of his profile for you? What makes him so appealing?
Well, I mean, we were talking about a lot of these, kind of undersized, smaller space movers that can create a ton of separation, moving across the formation. But Trey Harris flashed some ability to be able to operate on the outside, and his ability to create some yak with his play strength and contact balance is super exciting to me. There's some building blocks there. I want to see a little bit more when it comes to, and I also really liked him at the catch point. I think he's got some physicality at the catch point that, away from his frame, that has me very intrigued, I would call it. I just, get a little worried. I want to see a little bit more consistency from him as being able to, drop his hips and get in and out of breaks a little bit more consistently and fluid. Than what I saw last year, but playing with Jackson Dart certainly, and they've also got Antoine Wells, Juice, that's going to be transferring over. That's going to be a very interesting combination there in Ole Miss, as far as what they can do on the outside on the perimeter. And Wells has got some really nice rack ability that has me intrigued about him as well in this offense. And speaking of duos, Kentucky with Berrien Brown and Dane Key. They had Devin Leary last year under center. Obviously, Kentucky offense is going to be a little bit different, but I saw some really nice things from that duo as well. So we're talking about some of these offenses that have guys that I think are going to be kind of fringe day 2, day 3 upside that could really elevate their draft stock. But yeah, I mean, Trey Harris, though, there's just something about like his profile and his ability to, just bully DBs at the catch point in the SEC that really caught my eye on tape. I just want to see if he can build off that and kind of take that next step with Jackson Dart under center in 2024.
Yeah, that was the thing that really stood out to me, is the catch point instincts at its peak. Like, this is a guy who can make really, really tough adjustments and still haul in the football, right? So, being able to convert at such a high level really stood out to me. And then he's explosive. He can get up the seam. He can actually threaten DB angles down the field. So that's nice too. Definitely needs to grow as a route runner, but I can see that. A few other wide receiver names that are kind of floating around in my head right now. It's the summer, everyone who's listening. So we are very scatterbrained, as you can tell. Just any name that pops in, like, oh, there's one. You know, it's never ending. It really is. But I'll try and limit myself to only a few more. A few guys who were through the transfer portal. So Kentucky actually has a trio now. They had Dane Key, they had Barry Brown, and then they added Jeanty McMillan, who I think is related to Jeremy Macklin from North Texas. So that's a fun one. Good route runner, explosive, good playmaker. I'm excited to see what he can do there. Colin Lacey, transferring from South Alabama, where he was very productive, to Louisville, will be a fun one. Jared Brown, transferring from Coastal Carolina to South Carolina. He's a guy who's kind of that gadget player. You could scheme him touches, but he's got some fluidity and explosion as a route runner too. So I'm very excited to see that. And then there was one that was in my head and I forgot it. I remembered it. Will Shepard from Vanderbilt, who transferred to Colorado. Yeah, so really high volume offense there. Another guy who was like 6'2", 6'3", 200, but he could separate, man. He was Vanderbilt. He was an elite red zone threat for them last year. Very explosive, fluid, good hands. I think he can really hit some new heights with Colorado. So you have any receivers that you want to name drop real quick, and then we'll transfer to a running back?
Yeah, I mean, Squirrel White is maybe another player to keep an eye on there in Tennessee. You know, his top end speed is something that always has me a little super excited. And I'm kind of nervous about that Tennessee offense because it's so unicornish as far as how they operate and create space and get their receivers free releases. But certainly, you know, his profile is something that has me a little bit intrigued. Worth keeping an eye on, I would call it. But the running back position now, you know, we talked about Emeka Egbuka staying in college for an additional season, and now we're heading into the 2024 college football season with TreVeyon Henderson also deciding to stay at Ohio State for another season. He's in that running back one conversation heading into this class, but so is a transfer from Ole Miss who is going to be joining Henderson in the Ohio State backfield, and that's Quinshon Judkins. And boy, oh boy, this 1-2 punch, there's a chance that these two Ohio State backs could be the first two players selected, depending on how things play out, because I like both of their athletic profiles. But, you know, obviously there's other names that we got to discuss at the running back position. Ollie Gordon II over at Oklahoma State, Omarion Hampton over at North Carolina, Trevor Etienne going from the Florida Gators. I already mentioned he's going to the Georgia Bulldogs. Donovan Edwards just won himself a national championship with Michigan. Then there's Nick Singleton, Jaden Otten. Or Jaden Ott. Yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking Cade Otten, but it's Jaden Ott over there at Cal. So, you know, obviously there's a ton of other running backs that we can talk about. But what are your first impressions of this 2024 class? It felt like the 2023 class was a little bit weaker. I think that this one's a bit stronger. But what are your overall thoughts and maybe your top five heading for this running back position?
Yeah, for sure. I think we could go one at a time for our top five this time, because I was halfway through my receiver one. I was like, man, Ian, you're talking a lot. It's like, come on, you're talking a lot, man. So we'll go one at a time this time. But general impression first, very strong class. I think there's a lot of clashing molds and varieties, and that's the fun part, man. You know, there are a lot of guys who can fill that volume framework, but then they each bring a different flavor to the table, which is a lot of fun. So that's always the best of both worlds when you have the volume profiles, but then each one is a little different with their archetype. And so I'll start with my fifth running back. I'm gonna go 5-1 this time. I'm gonna build suspense. Okay. My RB5 is Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. It's 6 foot, 220. Dude is a brawler. He's like if a Rock'em Sock'em robot played a running back. You know, he's got that style to him, the high knees, the knee drive, very explosive, very good long speed as well, contact balance, grading physicality coming downhill. And I think he's a good, solid receiving threat. He's a good pass blocker. I think the third down utility is there. The one thing for me, creativity-wise, doesn't quite have the hit fluidity to stack quick cuts in succession. I think generally he's going to be more of a guy who's a plant and go type, right? Which he's got very good vision. I think he can work like that. And he's very explosive, physical as a forward pressing finisher. So he's got that profile to him. I like him a lot. Just not quite a top 3 running back for me, but a guy who I would take, you know, early day 2 and could be a really solid volume starter for me. So Omarion Hampton is my RB5. I think that evaluation so far has been pretty simple to me. Good vision, great explosion, great physicality. Maybe not the elite creative threat that some other guys in this class are, but very solid, dependable, and has the explosive flair to him. So who's your RB5?
No, I mean, Hampton certainly is in that conversation for me. I kind of prefer Nick Singleton. Yeah. I'm more, and I'm worried about Omarion Hampton with that North Carolina offense without Drake May. So I'm hoping that he's still able to have a incredibly productive 2024 campaign. But I like Nick Singleton. There's some reliability out of the backfield. Drew Aller felt very comfortable dumping it down to him, and certainly that receiver group there in Penn State left a lot to be desired last season. We'll see how they play out this year. But Singleton gives me vibes that he could be a 3-down contributor heading into the NFL. So Singleton is someone that kind of caught my eye, and Hampton is running back 6 on my board strictly because you mentioned the creativity, the hip fluidity. It just doesn't always look natural when he's out in space. He certainly has some nice lean, some vision, some burst. But like you said, I kind of think that he's more of a downhill runner and can, sift through arm tackles because he does play with great lean, and he is a good finisher in short yardage situations. I just worry about that creativity and ability to kind of get off of his track, if he's forced to change directions a bit too much early in the rep. Yeah. That's all. I mean, that's all that kind of stood out to me. I think Hampton's a very good player. I just have, Singleton a little bit higher on my board.
For sure. And I will say with Hampton too, like when he's pressing at a certain angle, he does have the lateral twitch to offset guys and like manipulate tackling angles, but it's like the sharp transitions, right? Like when you need to really roll and rotate your hips inward at a really quick reaction time, that's when he doesn't quite have it as much as some of the other guys in this class, which is natural when you're 6 foot, 220 pounds. Like that's a rocked up dude. It can be tough for those guys. So he's explosive, he's physical, he's got good vision. Nick Singleton, I will be honest, I haven't graded him yet, so I got to get to a grade, but I'm very excited too, because if I remember correctly, 5-star recruit, right? A lot of raw talent to work with there, and he's got the size, so I'm excited. You piqued my interest even more, so I'm very excited to get to him. My RB4 is TreVeyon Henderson, a little bit lower. I'll just do my 3-4 right now because they're on the same team. Quinshon Judkins is my RB3, Henderson is my RB4. So I think Henderson is a better receiving threat. I think he's more versatile as a receiving threat. I think he's very explosive, twitchy, good vision, good creative instincts, good contact balance as well, being 5'8", 5'9". He'll probably be 5'9", maybe closer to 5'10", actually. But, within that range, over 210. So he's got that density to him and just explosive, versatile, good pass blocker as well. I think a really good utility back with, again, that dynamic flair. Quinshon Judkins, to me, is that carving knife. That's the analogy that keeps coming to my mind with him, is that carving knife, because he is very explosive. I mean, in a blink, he's getting upfield, he's accelerating, and I think he's up to around 220 now. So he's got a little bit better mass and density, I think, than Henderson does. And he's very physical. I mean, he will press forward, he will drive through contact. The thing with me with Judkins, right? And this is the reason he's not my RB1 or RB2. I think he's a little bit better working on schedule as opposed to when he's faced with an early contact threat in the backfield. When his A gap gets blown up, right? Or when his guard gets worked back a little bit, he's not the most proficient at creating when he needs to. I think he's more of a guy who sees that hole, and he's got great vision. He sees it quickly and he explodes through, and he's that carving knife. He can bend through. He's got great lower body flexibility where he can sustain acceleration while attacking. And I think that in tandem with his physicality is going to make him a very good volume back at the NFL level. This is a guy that I would take early day too. If he can keep improving as a receiver and add more to his game there, can be maybe a late round 1 guy, right? But the lack of elite creative instincts is the one hang up for me, right? I think if you have an offense where if he's got a good blocking front, if things are on schedule, this is a dude who can eat up a defense and just keep the offense on the field for the entire game and keep racking up points and yards, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Because he's got the vision, the explosion, the carving capacity for that. He's my RB3. And I'll get my RB2 and RB1 later. But where are you at with those guys, and what's your 3-4 looking like?
Yeah, no. So I mean, at 3 and 4, so at 4 I've got Ashton Jeanty.
Ooh, I like that.
From Boise State. There's a little bit of, the contact balance is exceptional. Like, the ability to be able to sift through traffic. And I saw some nice patience and burst from him as well. Maybe he doesn't have the overwhelming physical profiles of your TreVeyon Henderson or your Quinshon Judkins, but certainly I loved the natural feel and elusive capabilities to be able to drop his hips and be able to just navigate his way through traffic. There were some nice reps being able to kind of, change direction, cut back lanes and accelerate and take the edge. But the contact balance is certainly something that has me very, very intrigued when it comes to Ashton Jeanty. And then at running back 3, I've got Trevor Etienne.
Okay. I like that.
I love his low center of gravity, his his lateral agility and his acceleration. Like there are some intriguing skill sets that I think translate to the NFL and can really provide an offense with a lot of versatility. I want to see more from him as a pass catcher. Yeah. And I don't think that he has a elite top speed. I'm not sure that he's going to be a quintessential home run hitter at the NFL level, but that ability to work through contact in between the tackles, lateral agility, like you said, maybe in the adverse to Judkins, when things break down early in the rep, I see ETN being able to have the lateral agility and the burst to get back upfield and change directions and kind of realign the GPS, so to say, early in the rep more so than someone like Judkins. I just really, really, really like a lot of that. I tend to value probably a little bit too much that lateral agility.
It's important. No, it is. You got to be able to recalibrate, cut back lanes. You got to be able to adapt when the play demands it. So no, I don't, I think it's something that should be valued very high. And Etienne, I haven't graded Etienne either, so I got to get to that. But I remember watching him last year. And explosive, agile, right? Those things stood out to me. The receiving volume or the lack thereof also stood out to me. That's one thing that I want to see more from this year. But Georgia is a very good environment for a running back to be in. They know how to use guys. They got the offensive line. They got the supporting structure. Carson Beck is going to keep defenses in that tug of war because he's such a good passer. So I could definitely see him filling in those gaps that you want him to this year. So sorry for cutting you off there, but no, I agree.
I wanted to get your thoughts on ETN. No, he's certainly a very intriguing player. I think the move from Florida to Georgia, I believe that's a positive for his production profile. Obviously we're still grading the guys on tape, so just because he's going to have more open rushing lanes isn't necessarily going to shoot him up my board. But the ability, and he's a little undersized. I don't know if I see 3 down back capabilities from ETN. I think he's only around like 205 pounds, but I do like his build. And his, play strength and contact balance is something that I think does exist. I don't think it's a negative by any stretch. So ETN coming in at running back 3 for me. So our boards look a little bit different with this class as of right now. So who's the number running back 2 in your class?
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry. There's a deer right outside my window, like standing up and eating from a tree, like literally like 20 feet away. I mean, it's catching my attention right now. I can't look away. It's a white-tailed deer. It's so cute. All right. RB2. Let's do a simultaneous reveal. All right. I'm going to count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1. 5 is too long. 3, 2, 1. And then we'll each give ours. 3, 2, 1. Ollie Gordon II. Hey, there we go. Synergy. That's what I'm saying. I love it. Ollie Gordon is my RB2. He is your RB2 as well. I guess the cards are on the table. So Derek, what do you like about this guy?
There's something about his physicality and, it's not maybe the most aesthetically pleasing, but there is so much functional agility for a guy that's, around 211 pounds. I love the vision, the patience, and he can stick his foot in the ground and accelerate. His contact balance is very, very, very nice. That's kind of what kind of stood out to me is this is a guy that's got that, I think, the physical build and the physical profile to be able to, be a leading back in the NFL, but there's just so much to like about his ability to navigate through and sift through traffic. It never looks like he's in too much of a rush. It's very patient, but when he decides to stick his foot in the ground and can do so through traffic, there's a lot to like about Ollie Gordon's game, and not to mention, I think he's a capable pass catcher as well. that 3 down, 5 tool capabilities, can stay on the field no matter what. Ollie Gordon really, really intrigues me heading into this college football season.
For sure. If I remember correctly, I think he had 39 catches for 330 yards last year, something like that. So good volume, good production for sure. And I think the one thing that stands out to me, 6'2", almost 220 pounds, right? The cutting flexibility, like you said. I mean, the agility, the cutting flexibility, just insane. He could sink at very acute angles and make very acute direction changes. And he does so with almost complete jurisdiction, right? Like, this is a guy who has that special spatial IQ. He scored a 9.5 for me in creative instincts. So it was really jarring because I watched Judkins and Gordon in the same day. I watched them on the same day, and they're both very good prospects, right? And with Judkins, you can see the vision and the ability to, again, I hate that I keep reusing this because I feel like a broken record, but carving through the defense. That's exactly what he does. He's explosive, he's bendy, and he's got great vision. He works very efficiently upfield. That's what he does. But Ollie Gordon II, right? When each of them was faced with an early contact threat, it was not night and day, but it was definitely noticeable. The difference with Ollie Gordon, right? Like, he senses it so well, and then he responds so well with that cutting flexibility, with that malleability, and he can stack quick cuts too. Like, the creative instincts, the feel, just the ability to know what's happening around you and how to respond in real time. And then he's explosive. He's not quite as explosive as Judkins, I don't think, but he is big. He's physical. He's a forward pressing guy. He's got that grating leg drive that comes from being a little bit taller, and he's willing to kind of lay the hammer when he's got that head of steam, right? So a lot of things to like about him, but I think it all centers on he's got the volume back profile with the next level creative ability too, that really you don't see often from that type of back. Very usually with a lot of guys who are bigger, like Omari and Hampton farther down the board. Like, he's explosive, he's physical, he's a little bit linear, vertical oriented, right? With Ollie Gordon, you're looking at a guy who maybe isn't quite as explosive. I still think he's explosive enough, but this is a guy who makes his living off of being fluid, flexible, adaptable, and those are traits that are so good to have at the running back position. So he's my RB2. He's your RB2. Big fan of Ollie Gordon II. He's a first round grade on my board, and I imagine he's kind of within that range for you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, early day 2 at worst case scenario, unless we see to suffer some sort of devastating injury or, regresses in a way that neither of us expect. Mm-hmm. No, Gordon's a very exciting player.
All right, here we are, the big reveal. RB1 in the storied 2025 NFL draft class. Derek, who is your preliminary RB1?
It's Quinshon Judkins. I believe, I hear you with everything that you mentioned about some of his weaknesses, but the upside, the carving knife, as you would call it, so to say, there's a lot to love. There's a lot to work with. I love the physical profile, and it's unfortunate that he's going to be working in tandem with Henderson, but I still think that he's the cream of the crop of this class. Some places and some areas to get a little bit better, like you mentioned in the passing game. I'm interested to see how he develops in that space heading into the 2024 season. But the physical tools are all there. And when you get him moving downhill, I do see enough balance, and I think he's got efficient feet when he's moving downhill. Yeah. So you get that frame and that physicality, and I do see some creativity when he gets to that second level. That really gets me super excited. It's just, and we're going to see more of that, I imagine, with him running now behind the Ohio State offensive line in that offense. So I think we're probably going to see the best of Quinshon Judkins. I keep throwing an extra N in there.
It's tough, man, because you say Quinshon Judkins, it's natural. It's a natural progression,
right? So, but as far as the physical profile, there's just so much to like. And I love his physicality. Yeah. Love his physicality and love his contact balance, contact strength, finishes runs with authority. There's a lot to love about his game.
What do you think about his, the thing that stood out to me is his energy, right? Like the stride frequencies. Like, this dude is just like Energizer Bunny out there. Like, he moves so fast just within his cylinder, right? Like, he's fast, he's explosive, but I think one reason he is so good at staying on his feet is because his feet are moving at like lightning speed, like particle accelerator type speed. Like, what did you see that too? I'm wondering if we're seeing the same thing.
There was a little bit of Roger Craig with his feet. Maybe not his knee. Maybe no one ran like Roger Craig with his the high knees, but as far as like I don't. there's like just almost like an Energizer Bunny type of electricity with his feet sometimes. And I want him to be able to harness that, consistently from rep to rep to rep. But certainly the functional, foot quickness and physical capabilities as far as his play strength and not only contact balance, but initiating contact. Sure. There's a lot of things that I love as potentially him being a leading back heading into the NFL. I just want to see him kind of, show those market improvements in some of the deficient parts of his game. Like you said, maybe in the backfield, being able to navigate through congestion or penetration a bit more consistently. I don't know. Maybe we won't get those answers playing behind Ohio State's offensive line, but certainly there's a lot to like as far as a back with that type of foot quickness and ability to kind of weave through traffic. I came away really impressed watching some of his Ole Miss reps.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what he can do in a new offense, and I'm hoping that maybe he can glean some of that receiving upside from TreVeyon. I mean, we know TreVeyon in the years that he's been used at Ohio State has been a very versatile receiver. You'll see him split out in the slot sometimes, right? He's got a full route tree. So Quinshon, I think it speaks to him as a former 3-star recruit that he was able to produce as much as he did as a true freshman, like literally first team all SEC as a true freshman. I think that acclimation ability speaks to him well. So, if you're a scout looking at, can he learn? Can he develop the parts of his game that he doesn't have? I think there's reason to be optimistic there for sure. So he's my RB3, but I can easily see why he's your RB1. My RB1 in the 2025 NFL draft, preliminary RB1, is Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. That is my RB1.
There we go.
This guy... I'm going to pull up my grade real quick, but he graded over elite in 3 categories for me and on the doorstep of elite in 2 more. Vision and receiving ability, he is right there. I think he can be an elite threat in both those areas, but creative instincts, contact balance, agility, and twitch, he graded for me elite or hyper elite in all of those areas. This is a guy who is 5'8" and 1/4, 217 pounds. So again, really low to the ground, but really dense, man. I mean, I think back to Kamani Vidal, who was one of our favorite late round guys from this path class, right? Kind of having that low center of gravity and just being really hard to tackle because of how massed up you are, right? But I think Jeanty takes it to a whole nother level because he's got that elite elusive ability too. Like, this is a guy who, again, we talk about spatial IQ, spatial awareness, feeling where defenders are and reacting quickly. That's his MO. And then he's got the elite elusiveness to kind of offset and gain space for himself. And then even if you do manage to hit him head on, how are you going to get low enough to tackle this guy, right? He's got the natural leverage, he's got the mass, he's got the energetic lower body motion, the physicality as well, and just the vision to pick out those lanes too. The one thing for me was that, maybe not elite explosion, but he's still graded an 8 for me in explosiveness. So I think he's easily very explosive. He's definitely explosive enough. It's just, I think the short strider mold hurts him a little bit there. A guy like Quinshon Judkins, who's 5'11", 6 foot, very energized and maybe covers a little bit more ground with each stride, right? But I still think Jeanty has enough, and I think Jeanty is a phenomenal receiving back. I think he had over 40 catches, over 500 yards last year. So his route tree really surprised me, and it shouldn't have, looking at the production, but he's fluid. He can run legit like in breakers off of those stems, right? Like, he's got the fluidity in the bend to do all of those things. The pass blocking is the one area where I'm thinking to myself, maybe never going to be a high level pass blocker because he's a little bit smaller and he could be moved a little bit easier by power. But as a runner, right, on the attack, explosive, creative, instinctive, right, elite contact balance and elusive ability, he graded very highly for me. And if he gets into the elite range in one of those 2 areas that I didn't quite give him a 9 in, he can be a blue chip prospect for me. He can be above a 9 for me, which I haven't had one of those since the only one that I've ever had is Bijan Robinson. So Ashton Jeanty, safe to say, very high on my board. Very big fan of what he has to offer on the 3-down framework. But the moral of the story is this RB class, there are so many different flavors. There are so many different talents. And it's going to be very fun to see how they sort out. Before we sign off here, because I know there are probably people who listened and were wondering about tight ends, offensive linemen, because we were talking about offense. We will have to get to those in depth down the road, but some guys that I've liked in my preliminary watches, Colston Loveland from Michigan is a dude. He's could be a top 20 prospect for me. Super fluid and explosive for his size, but he's got good catching instincts and body control too. Not quite the versatile, dynamic weapon like Brock Bowers is, but I think a guy who can carve through defenses, again, with that route running, with that fluidity, and then he's got the hands to make plays at the catch point. A few other tight ends that I like, Terrence Ferguson from Oregon is a fun one for sure. Luke Lachey from Iowa, who lost most of last year to an injury, but another good seam threat, good hands, rack. RJ Maryland, Mitchell Evans, a few guys that I'm getting to later on. But I think it's going to be another intriguing class. And then on the offensive line, a few guys that I like so far: Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks Jr., not Kelvin Benjamin, Kelvin Banks Jr., Jonas Savaianaya from Arizona. I probably botched that pronunciation. I'll practice it. Don't worry. But it's going to be another fun offensive line class too. So we weren't able to get to those positions in depth this time around, but we will down the line, and we will have plenty more analysis for you. Derek, any closing thoughts for our, I guess it became an RB wide receiver podcast, and it was well spent for sure. Any closing thoughts for our listeners?
No, shocker. The fantasy guy wanted to talk about receivers and running backs the whole time. No, but certainly it's going to be a fun class. I think that, like you said, many different flavors at both the running back and wide receiver positions that are going to be very intriguing to keep an eye on throughout the 2024 college football season.
Yes, sir. I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you as always for listening. We were off last week, but we are back, and we will continue to be back. I think somewhere in mid-July, we might take another week off. So we will let you know ahead of time when that does happen. But in the meantime, we will be back with some more preseason summer analysis on the 2025 NFL draft, starting with our soft defensive preview next week, hitting that side of the ball. So in the meantime, thank you all for listening. Peace out. Have a good one.